My name is Justina Velasquez. I live in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. I've lived here for over 30 years. I've been here since I was 6 months old. Before my injury, I was very outgoing and very active. I was working 50 plus hours a week, 13 days at a time. I was basically nonstop, but I constantly embraced life. I loved life no matter how chaotic it got, no matter the negatives that were happening. I was a genuinely happy person. And I had a puppy and I was busy with him. So if I wasn't at work and at home cleaning, I was out at the dog park and just running around with him and training him. It was a very active lifestyle. I was working in the liquor department at the grocery store I was employed at the time, and they were converting part of their area to a growler station, where you can take a refillable jug and go fill it up with microbrews, what have you. Well, then they were going to ultimately convert that into a bar, and I actually had gone and received my bar management license, and I was actually going to run that bar. And that kind of put things in perspective for me because I didn't know really where I wanted to go. I know I didn't want to work just in a grocery store the rest of my life, but that really kind of put it in perspective, like maybe I can be a bartender, maybe I can be a mixologist. I always thought that type of a job or a career would be absolutely fun. I was a people person, very sociable creature, so that's kind of where I was leading to. They were starting construction, and that's when the accident happened. I was seeing somebody. I was off that day and I was enjoying some drinks and everything like that. He came to pick me up that night, and for full transparency, I was completely intoxicated to the point where I know I couldn't drive, I could barely walk. So I just remember that I was still in a way coherent enough to be able to know what I wanted to go do. So I proceeded to get into the truck with him, and I wanted to go get something to eat. So we went to a drive-through, and I remember having my seatbelt on, and I couldn't find my debit card. I thought I had dropped it on the floor of the truck. So I took my seatbelt off, what have you, looked for it. We ended up just paying for the food, leaving. My last memory leading up to the accident was we were on my street because he had offered for me to go look for my debit card at my house, and I said no, forget it. So we continued on to our destination, and that's the last thing I remember is turning off our street. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm looking at him, and I know he's saying something to me. I don't remember what it was, and then it just went black. And then I just remember waking up in the hospital, and it resulted in I was pinned on the floorboard. So they actually had to extract me from the vehicle, and I'd learned that I'd broken my neck, and that had resulted in a spinal cord injury. Yeah, they told me that, I was never going to walk again. There were a lot of organs and functions that weren't going to come back and I wouldn't regain. So, but they told me that the best way to try to get the body to start moving again is you have to get the signals and the messages from the brain to the spine, what have you, that sends the signals to the body for motor control. So that's what I did. And I always say that I had my Kill Bill moment where, she's looking at her toe and she's telling it to move. I did that same exact thing. I was lying in a hospital bed looking at my toe, and it started moving on my right side. And I really don't exactly remember like the progression of it, but I felt like my right side came back fairly quickly. I was just in the hospital. Any little thing, little cups, I was trying to grab and use my fingers and just anything I could do to get moving again. And once they saw that I was starting to regain movement, that's when physical therapy started and stuff like that. And once I was able to breathe a little bit better on my own, I qualified for rehab. And when I went to rehab, I went to Barrow Neurological Institute. Absolutely amazing place. I did extensive physical therapy every single day. It was 6 to 8 hours a day of physical therapy, waking up at 6, having lunch at 12 and going up till about 2 or 3. And anytime a therapist had extra time, they offered me extra sessions. I took it. I took anything I could get. It was definitely difficult. I remember having to have my teeth brushed for me and being showered and all of these things, and it was difficult, but it was just a lot of determination, and I have the most wonderful support system. So through a lot of hard work, and I do dedicate part of my physical recovery to the wonderful surgeon that did my neck surgery, because that a lot of things can go wrong during those types of surgeries, and my injury is an incomplete versus complete, which I wasn't aware of initially. So that kind of just gave me more motivation to just keep trying. I went and bought, parallel bars. I went and bought weights, and I worked really hard for the first couple of years just trying to move my body and exercise in any way I can. And it's come as far as it has today. When it comes to a traumatic event like this, you already have that, that whole life change. Exactly. It's a new norm. But I'm a very independent individual. I'm very independent minded. I always believe that you need to be self-sufficient. When that is, it's literally ripped away. I always felt like I was just picking up the pieces off the road still where the accident was. And I didn't notice anything in the first year besides the frustration of not being able to get up and go do this myself. But it was more of just the first year of trying to just get through every single minute, every hour of every day. Because not only did I have to adjust, we had to go home and adjust the house, our lifestyle. My parents had to adjust their lifestyles. It was getting the bathroom set up. So honestly, none of that really hit until my second year, because everybody's like, you're so positive and you're such in a good mood and I love your outlook on this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm happy. I fought so hard for 3 months. I was away from home. I'm now home. I'm with my loved ones, and who wouldn't be happy? But the second year hit and I understood what everybody was talking about. I started having all of these different emotions that I really never, like I said, I was happy before. So I just started really getting crying spells. I was just thinking about, that rumination of everything that's going on in your life and all the negatives and all of the I can'ts that those hit really hard. So I would just kind of lock myself in my bedroom and cry for hours, inconsolably for hours. And it was consecutive days at a time. And then, I became very frustrated because I felt like you feel so alone. People can be very understanding and they can try to be as empathetic as possible, but in reality, no one around you knows what exactly you're going through. So I felt alone. I felt like I didn't want to talk to my loved ones because they wanted to help. And I just, I'm like, you're not going to understand anyway, so what's the point? And that internal conflict led to this extreme frustration where I just felt like I no longer existed anymore. I felt that my physical voice and my metaphorical voice had been taken away from this world. It was very hard to deal with that. I did feel like I was just kind of disappearing. I developed great anxiety, even being around my own family, because you develop all these insecurities, like, of course I gained weight and all of these things that happens with being, a sedentary lifestyle. So then I had insecurities. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to see me like this. So it was just really hard to even have a conversation with people. And I kind of felt this has to be depression when I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to get up to take a shower. I didn't want to get out of bed. All I wanted to do was sleep. And I'm like, I know where this is leading to. And finally, the intrusive dark thoughts started happening where I felt like I didn't exist, so I didn't want to exist. And the suicidal thoughts and everything like that started to develop. And for full transparency, again, I thought about death every single day. When those thoughts were starting to become very aggressive and they weren't going away because I was very stubborn, I wanted to do this on my own. I wanted to get through this because I didn't realize I had a traumatic brain injury at the time either. So I just thought, I can deal with this. I can get through this. And then it wasn't getting better. So it was at the end of my second year, I believe. I kind of had to be honest with myself and be like, you're not getting better. This is getting worse. You have now shunned out your entire family. I became very disassociated with the world. So I was like, okay, maybe it is time to get help. Maybe I can't do this on my own. And I had to be very open-minded and, like I said, honest with myself to realize that it just wasn't getting any better. So I reached out and I came to Southwest. And I asked them, this is what I'm going through, is there anything you can do? It's trauma. Do you have a trauma counselor? And they didn't have anybody at the time. They were very filled up, very busy. So they wanted to put me in a group, in a self-help group. And I was just not happy with that fact that I mentioned the social anxiety, and I was like being around people trying to talk about my problems. This isn't me. I just wanted to be one-on-one. So either way though, I was like, be open-minded. So I proceeded to go with the group, and at first it was a little overwhelming. I was learning all these concepts and methods that I really have never heard of. I think that we naturally build an emotional intelligence as we're growing up, and you don't think that you are doing these things, but these things that you're doing actually have a name to them. So I was like learning a whole new language, and so that was a little overwhelming, but I wanted to put into the work. And the most helpful, it came from listening to people's stories and realizing that though you are all in different complete situations, you are all experiencing the same psychological issues, and those issues are having the same effects on us. And that was like the most comforting feeling in the world, to finally realize that I wasn't alone. And eventually I got into one-on-one counseling. That did a great deal for me. It started off where I would see her on a Monday, and by Friday I was a mess, falling apart, couldn't even get through the weekend, and it progressed, and I started getting better, where I would make it, maybe a week, I would make it a week and a half, I would make it a month. So that did me really well. And then I went into another group, a women's empowerment group. And I think that it took everything I learned in the first group, everything I was learning from my counselor, and it just kind of magnified that, and it went into more of like the self-care and the self-love. And these were all turning points for me, but I think that was the most drastic change that I saw in myself. I was able to just talk more, be social. Those insecurities I felt like were not diminishing, but dissipating into a way where confidence was growing instead. And I am very thankful for my support system at home, the support system here, but I'm very proud of myself for making that ultimate decision to get help, because I always thought that being able to walk again would be the best accomplishment in my life post-injury. And not to minimize that, but my biggest accomplishment was making the decision to get help.